Hey guys, Dustin Witt.
Hey, this is Scott Snyder.
This is Paul Dini.
And you're listening to Bat Force Radio.
And you're listening to Bat Force Radio.
You're listening to Bat Force Radio.
This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman, and you're listening to Bat Force Radio, so stay tuned.
Welcome back to Bat Force Radio. We just had a nice little Black Adam episode. We've been talking about this for years, right, Grumps? Right, Robin?
Yeah.
This has been like years in the making where we've done like one episode reviews, and we've always wanted to do Grant Morrison stuff, but we've always like thought there's just so much that he's done, and you really have to kind of give him more than just an episode. I mean, you have to do like a series of episodes if you're going to do a Grant Morrison run. And he's one of the most known runs on Batman in the modern age. And what we want to do is first go around the round table because I completely forgot that. We got Robin D. Cross in Canada.
Hello.
We got Gramps over in Texas.
Hi.
We got Teases on a potty break, but he's coming back in Jersey. We got Grumps in New York.
In the Rotten Apple.
And like we said, we've been wanting to do this for a while. Grumps would you say, I think, is Morrison like your favorite Batman writer? One of your favorite Batman writers?
That was my, that run that he did from, I think it's 2005 to, I forget when it ended. But yeah, that was, maybe, just... Well, it ran side by side with the New 52 for a little bit at the end.
At least a year or two.
With Batman Incorporated there,
Incorporated stuff. But I think it was 7 years. I think it was like a 7-year run. So yeah, that was my favorite in terms of, Batman writers. Yeah.
Gramps, and this is something that we can all kind of jump on. Where did you remember your first exposure to Grant Morrison? What was it? Was it Batman? Was it something else?
Well, if you remember from my origin episode, Tom, in the early beginnings of Bat Force Radio, my early beginnings with Batman were reading Alan Grant and Norm Brayfogel's run, and then discovering after the Batman '89 movie, I found this little book called Dark Knight Returns by I think he was a novice writer named Frank Miller. But then that led me to also picking up this other book called Arkham Asylum, A Serious House on Serious Earth. And reading that as a 13-year-old really did some damage to my psyche. It really scared me. I read it once and I put it down and I never touched it again until I was an adult.
Wow.
Because it scared me. It was like, what is this? This is so crazy. I was seeing, when you're used to reading, Batman in the way that Norm Brayfogle drew him and Jim Aparo and all those guys, Neil Adams, and then you see that and you read that, you're like, what? I don't even know who this is, but it's like watching a horror movie that scares you, but you love it. But that was that was the second graphic novel I ever read of Batman, and it kind of fucked me up.
Teasy, do you remember like when you first learned about Grant Morrison? Was it reading him? Was it just hearing about him?
Yeah, I think I have to piggyback with what Graham said. It was obviously like older, but definitely the Arkham Asylum stuff definitely drew to my interest because of just how painterly and like how abstract it was. It looked like it was just out of left field. It felt very like high end in art, like a high art taste looking story that was just hyper realistic, but very cryptic. And just I just remember in my head like the Joker. Like you see that painterly vision of Joker where he looks real. He looks like a real person. That sparked my interest, and to me, that story is very psychological, and it's something that has never been done before. So that was like that's the Grant Morrison that I like personally,
Mm,
outside of like the
mm,
multiverse stuff.
mm.
It was like reading something that I knew I shouldn't read. It was a little taboo. I was like, I don't know if I.
Like those dirty magazines.
Yeah,
I
I was
gonna
like,
say
I don't know
Grant's
if I
first
should be
Playboy.
reading this, but I like it. But it's
It
kind of scary.
definitely is a horror movie.
Yeah.
I'm jealous of you guys. First time I ever read or knew about Grant Morrison, it was well after R.I.P. was, I believe, a trade, and I don't know what the fuck was going on when I tried to read through it. So I was just completely confused. But Robin, what was your first little taste of Grant Morrison?
A lot of it was around this, like read really close together, and I didn't even register that it was the same guy writing it. So like Arkham Asylum, Gothic at the beginning of Legends of the Dark Knight, a bunch of that stuff, and I wasn't paying attention so much to who creators were at the time. So I wasn't realizing that that this was the same guy doing all this stuff. So yeah, there were a few things, but that it was all that that temperature of stuff that I was reading from, and it was between Asylum and Gothic as well. It's a really darker and more serious take than what most comics are
Yeah.
or were.
If I could just go back real quick, like to your question, Tom. Like I was in the same boat as Gramps, right? Like I had that Arkham Asylum book and I didn't know what the fuck I was reading or looking at. Uh The Legend of the Dark Knight I was buying and I read Gothic and that was like, all right, this is kind of not superhero stuff, like whatever. Uh but I think the first time like the name Grant Morrison registered with me was probably Justice League. I think that was in the 90s. Was it late 90s or early 2000s his Justice League run?
Yeah, he's been around. It was before the Batman
Yeah.
stuff, so it's like, and
So
he
that
already had,
was
yeah.
because Batman in that arc of whatever the initial run, the Batman was kind of, I don't know, the focus, I guess.
Yeah, like the area where he was writing like the Bat God, as people call him, where like no one could do shit to him.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
the Justice League Watchtower gets taken over, and all of the Justice League members get taken out, and he's the last one, and he's like basically stalking. Is it
The
one of the
White
Martians?
Martians.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's stalking the Martians and like picking them off like one by one because he's like, oh fuck, it's Batman. Like
Yeah.
he's the only Justice League member that can take us down. Um, so what for the listeners? I almost said the readers. Well, that too. For the listeners who are not familiar with who Grant Morrison is, he's 62 years old, guys. I'm not sure if you knew
Yeah.
that.
Oh, actually, I just want to, just out of respect, point out one thing. Grant does identify now as they.
That's right. Okay, my apologies.
Oh,
Grant Morrison was born in 1960. They are 62 years old, which is it's pretty nuts considering you don't think that they're that old or that they're getting that old, and you see pictures of them. Maybe it's because they have a bald head, and that hides age very well. But they were just on Seth Meyers recently. You can go watch that
Yeah.
interview.
Yeah,
Grant.
I've got a part from that I wanted to read.
Oh, cool. Grant was born in 1960, and their father was a very like counterculture, hippie kind of anti-government, um, um, anti like establishment individual. Siri's yelling at me, and Grant. There's a
Well, get
couple
your
of
shit right.
interviews that are really worth checking out. One of them is the Kevin Smith one. He doesn't have it on his regular stuff, but if you go on YouTube, you can just search "Fat Man on Batman" with Grant Morrison, and they talk about a lot of what Grant Morrison kind of came up with as far as a kid growing up in the '60s and '70s. And a big thing about Morrison is that their background of growing up in Scotland in like a very like poor, weird area really informs his mind. And a big thing that happened was going back to the time, Gramps, when you were reading. We talked about this a little bit in a previous episode, but they were just fresh out of finishing writing Arkham Asylum. The '89 Batman movie comes out. It's a smash hit. And what does everyone want to do? They want to go to a comic book shop. They want to read. I want to read something Batman and Joker. And the graphic novel that was on the shelves at the time was Grant Morrison's Arkham Asylum.
Yeah.
So Grant Morrison at the time, I believe, had a dollar a page deal for every issue sold. So every issue sold of Arkham Asylum, he got $1 per page, and it made them an overnight millionaire instantly. They had already done Doom Patrol, they'd already done Animal Man, they'd already done some X-Men stuff. Obviously, this was a massive success though, and it just blew them out of the. I mean, that name now is it started kind of kicking off what Grant Morrison eventually became. So Grant goes, DC goes to Grant. You can do whatever you want now. What do you want to do? And Grant says, I don't want to do anything. I just made a ton of money. I'm gonna go travel. So Grant decides, and they were very fond of smoking weed and hanging out and talking and watching documentaries. And they were watching a documentary about this temple in Nepal in Kathmandu, and the temple states, the legend states that if you ascend the temple steps in under, I think, 150 steps, in one breath, 150 steps, you will reach enlightenment. So Grant and his friend, they're like, I just made a bunch of money. I'm a millionaire. Let's go do this. They took a trip. They booked a trip to Nepal, and he took time away. He wasn't writing or anything. Took a trip to Nepal. They wanted to ascend the steps, so they found a guide. They ascended the steps. They go up to this temple, and then they're like, "That's it, okay." And then Grant states, and you can find this if you Google search or if you go on YouTube and you look up Grant Morrison Chaos Magic. If you he'll tell. I'm sorry, they say it. And I'm so sorry, by the way, anyone who's like offended. I'm fucking it up, but I'm
Yeah.
trying.
Well, we weren't aware until we started this episode.
Yeah, didn't have much
So
practice.
Robin mentioned it. So.
But Grant essentially states in multiple versions of this story that they were in a hotel room 2 days after they ascended the steps of this temple, and that they were visited by beings of molten metal, circular molten metal beings entered his hotel room and took his consciousness out of his body, shot him up into the universe, and asked them, what would you like to see? And Grant said, I want to see the origins of life, of life on Earth. So they showed them some part of the universe that apparently is the origins of life, and they asked them again, now what do you want to see? And Grant Morrison said, I want to see the meaning of life. What's the point, or whatever? And Grant Morrison says that these beings showed them the point of life is to grow. These celestial beings, they cannot exist within. There is no time. There is no space. Reality does not exist within time and space. So these celestial beings have to create life so that they can grow souls in a garden to learn from experience, so that they can learn from their experiences. They suffer, they live, they die, and then they can ascend to the celestial plane. So Grant Morrison sees
And this is all, Tom. This is all while he's on hash.
This is he said he was smoking hash, yeah.
Yeah.
But they claim that they were a little high, but that this is a real experience. That this is what they claim. This is a real experience.
Yeah.
I was a little high.
That's what he said.
I
But
did not inhale.
Grant,
And this is like the fifth dimension stuff,
yeah,
correct?
fifth
Yeah.
dimension. And so he says they took him to the fifth dimension. They took them to the fifth dimension. He's experiencing these beings that are more real to him than anything that they've ever experienced in the real 3D dimension, or whatever you want to call it, the real 3D dimension. And the beings tell him the meaning of life is you are not a person the way you see yourself right now. You're a sliver of time and space. You see yourself as the Grumps right now, at whatever age you are, in whatever place you are. And Grant Morrison states that they made it very clear that is not what you are. You are not a sliver of time. You are not a sliver of space. You are a process. You're more of like a worm. You are a caterpillar from birth all the way to death. And that is the experience of life. And that is how you're supposed to see it. And that is what it really is. So you live, you're born, you live, you die, and that is the experience. And we grow life, we grow souls in this plane, and there is a much bigger reality than the one you can see and experience. This happens multiple times until you're able to mature your soul to then ascend to the celestial plane, heaven, if you want to call it that. Grant is like, what the fuck? And he asks them, what am I supposed to do? And these celestial beings tell Grant, you need to tell as many people as possible what we just told you. And Grant says, how the fuck am I supposed to do that? So they shoot their body back down to their body in on Earth, and Grant tries to figure out, how am I supposed to explain this to people? Then they realize, oh, I'm a comic book writer. I'll just pepper it into my comic books.
Yeah.
And so that was right before they started writing the Invisibles. They write the Invisibles, and Grant's like, I wonder how I'm supposed to get this to as many people as possible. The Invisibles turns into a very popular book. There you go. Is it was that Image or Boom? What is that?
This is Vertigo.
Vertigo. So it's DC, technically Vertigo.
Yeah.
So the Invisibles blows up, and it could be argued that the Wachowski siblings came along and they made a little movie called The Matrix. And The Matrix, if you take images of The Matrix, scenes out of The Matrix, they are shot for shot remakes of panels from The Invisibles. The story is very similar. There's this reality, there's this matrix that's the reality that you experience is not real. There's something greater. You're asleep. You have to wake up. We have to release you from this mental prison so that you can ascend and realize what your purpose truly is. So Grant figures, I'm going to put all of this stuff into the comic books I write. Now, the reason why I say Grumps, why I realize, oh, I think I know why this is Grump's favorite comic or comic run, is because Grant Morrison, something that they did was they took every aspect of Batman's history, from all the campy shit, all the funny shit,
Yeah.
all the first appearance shit, and Grant said, this all happened. All
To
of it.
one guy.
One guy. There's
Yeah.
no multiple versions of Batman. There's one Batman, there's one Bruce Wayne, and he experienced all of this. And he found a way to call back all of this history, and he said that every iteration of Batman has been 1 year of his life. So the 1960s, the 1970s, Batman being alone, Batman with it's all a year of his life. Every different iteration, all the weird shit, it's all 1 year of his life. And a lot of the things that he claims, or they claim, that were told to him by these celestial beings, Grant tried to write into the comic book. The things about consciousness, where life, death, and what happens to you. The aspect of when he dies, when Batman dies, spoilers, one of the things that happens is near the end of Final Crisis, when he shoots, Darkseid,
Darkseid.
and Darkseid shoots him with his Omega beams and kills him. Oh, you're dead. That's it. But what Grant did was he took Batman's consciousness and he threw him back in time. And now you have to follow Bruce Wayne through this process of going through time back to the present. That concept of consciousness, that concept of time and space not being real, that's part of what he was told by these celestial beings. So using Batman, he's challenging this notion of, what is consciousness? Could you relive experiences in a different body? What are you? What is a person? What is that experience? Can Batman be Batman through his ancestors in the past? Could Batman remember who he is through different variations, through reincarnation? And so all those themes that he was kind of told by what they were told by the celestial beings, he's peppered in. The trippy nostalgia of the 60s, there's moments when Batman is and Robin, through Joker, through Scarecrow's fear toxin, they're tripping out. They're having hallucinations. They're having trips. And so a lot of what he writes is the 1960s campy weird shit, the bang, the pow, and all the weird colors and all that. That's because they were tripping balls on Scarecrow toxin, and they're fucking high, and they're on psychedelics. And that's a big part of his history, is that he experimented a great deal with psychedelics. He experimented a great deal with different cults and different
isolation
types. Yeah, the isolation of and what's so great about that too is some of that stuff has actually happened throughout history, where the CIA took LSD and was using it and experimenting it on people to see what it would do. The notion of Batman creating an identity of himself to have as a backup plan should his identity and mind be wiped. That's kind of crossing over on, again, the experience that you have. What is consciousness? Can you survive past death? Can you exist outside of your body, outside of time? Can you unlock yourself in different versions of yourself? All this, it's just layered on layers of crazy shit. But what I wanted to do was ask you guys, did you know about the alien stuff? Did you know about the crazy shit? How much of how crazy and how wild Grant Morrison is did you really know? Or have you known?
I didn't know any of that shit, like the crazy ideas that he was revealing when he was on what you mentioned on Kevin Smith's Fat Man on Batman show. That
Yeah,
was
that
when
was.
I started realizing how deep all these ideas went, where they came from.
Did you guys ever hear? I remember going into comic shops, or I forget when, maybe at conventions. Oh, Colt was one of them. Colt was like, "Oh, Grant Morrison," and I think he was like, oh yeah, he's out there, or he's whatever, or they're whatever." And I remember thinking, I heard about the alien thing. I heard about the drugs. That was the thing I knew the most. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
he does drugs, LSD. He's a big tripper. You know, he trips.
I knew after reading Arkham Asylum, he was a Satanist. He was from the devil. And I took some snakes and I purified that book.
It's hilarious.
Oh, that's funny.
So I knew that you were going to get into all that side of where Grant comes from. So I wanted to cite the way he looks at the way that they look at superheroes specifically, which was revealed as we mentioned earlier on Seth Meyers just last month. So Grant has a novel coming out, and Seth was sort of referencing the subject matter of that, and it deals with characters who are cross-dressers, appear in drag throughout the story. So Seth was sort of referring to the difference between what Grant's doing now and what he's really well known for. And so Seth said, to some degree, it seems like drag is a huge departure from, say, superheroes, but in another way, it's not at all. And this is what Grant said, and I'm going to, because I don't know any other way, I'm going to read it in a really terrible Grant impersonation. So Grant said, you think of Superman, Peter Parker, those are just nerdy guys, but they dress up in these super flamboyant costumes and go out at night. Batman's the worst. Batman's dressed for the fetish club. He gets in this big car and he cruises the streets of Gotham. Obviously, he's hoping Joker notices. That's what he wants. He wants to be seen, and that's why there's no way he's going out as Bruce Wayne. That guy's putting on the ears and the cape. He's like, notice me. So I think it's a hop, skip, and a jump from RuPaul to Bruce Wayne.
That's amazing.
That's just fun to know that
good.
Grant sees superheroes that way, like they're getting into the costumes and being so different from the daytime version of them. We get the after dark version of Bruce Wayne, and yeah.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but in that interview with Kevin Smith, did he also talk about, his upbringing in Glasgow, that there was always the fear, because Glasgow is a very industrial town or city, and they made like war supplies and warships in Glasgow during the World War II. So there was always the threat that was going to be a military target. And he grew up in that, ideology that, we could be bombed at any time. So there was always that fear there.
So I can't remember if it was in the Kevin Smith interview, but there was times when they said specifically a memory that Grant shares is their father being anti-war, anti-establishment, anti any of that industrial complex. Their father was a photographer or a writer for a local paper and would use Grant as an excuse to sneak into military bases and military installations to take photos of military bases and what they were doing for that exact purpose to go against it.
Right.
So Grant grew up with his dad, this hippie dad, that would take him with their dad, to go and like basically, yeah, like take photos and look at what they're doing in our town. Look what they're turning our town into a war zone.
Right.
So yeah, that was very much part of their upbringing that he mentions.
Right.
Yeah, see, there's a story that they recalled where Grant was a little boy. I think they were like 6 or 7, and their dad, picks them up and throws them over a fence just in case they get caught. The dad was going to say, "Oh, we threw his ball over and we were trying to get the ball back." So then Grant's dad jumps over the fence with his camera, runs to this like military base to take photos, and runs back just so under the cover of Grant throwing a ball over the fence. Nuts
Wow.
stuff, dude.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The father was into like hallucinogens as well, right?
Not I don't remember if
Okay.
dad was, but the thing that Grant mentions is they didn't start doing drugs and stuff like that until they were 30. They were pretty
Mm.
straight laced, no alcohol, no drugs, and it wasn't until they were a established adult that they chose to start experimenting. And Grant used to cross dress. Grant used to dress as a woman and go to nightclubs. Grant
Yeah.
and they would do that just because they mention challenging the norms of is what is my body, what is my identity, what is my person, what is myself. Can I blur that line? Can I be somebody else? Can I be am I somebody else? And that was an experience they had. And interesting stuff. And that's why it's so important to kind of understand all of this. And it gives clarity to what they're writing in Batman. And something that this is one of the first things when I think of Grant Morrison, I think of Batman R.I.P. And some of the themes in that involve identity, involve challenging these notions of this, especially like the tying in everything from the first iteration of Batman and making it a different version of yourself. Every year is a different iteration. The isolation chamber, the tripping balls, the seeing yourself in the 60s, the seeing yourself with the colors and all that. And all the different, he's jamming all these different personalities into one Batman, which is just crazy that they were able to do that and pull it off pretty well.
There was a part where Bruce was talking about how he went to Nanda Parbat
Yeah.
and he said he wanted to taste the flavor of death,
Mm,
to say he experienced everything, to look into the void, and so that just
yeah,
And
reminds me of the story, Grant's story of going to Kathmandu.
if
yeah,
if
very.
sorry, if anyone is listening to this and is already a fan of Grant's run, and you are not reading the current Chip Zdarsky Batman,
Oh
you should
yeah.
really get into a lot of what Chip is doing is really informed from Grant's work. Not only Chip stuff on the main Bat book, but also in Batman the Knight, the 10-issue story that he did that covers the time where Bruce was traveling the world doing all this training, all the stuff that we know through the legend has happened, but no one ever told that whole story before. So now Chip did that, and yeah, we get into Nanda Parbat and all that stuff.
Cool.
Mm. Uh, one of the things that a lot of people were confused about, but I always loved is the Batman of Zur-En-Arrh, and again, challenging the idea of identity. What is a self? What is like your consciousness? What is your personality? What like Bruce Wayne believes that they're Batman, and Bruce Wayne is the secret identity or the mask. And Grant kind of played with the idea of if your mind is wiped, if your memories are lost, how could you remember who you are? And Batman has kind of a contingency plan for everything, so he included that. Is if I were to ever lose my mind, if I were to ever lose my memories, if I were to ever lose my sense of self, how could I retain my identity? So he created the identity of Zur-En-Arrh to be a fail-safe plan in case that happens. And we'll get into spoilers, but Doctor Hurt and the is it the black is the black hand or the black
The
glove?
the Yeah. Doctor Hurt, the Black Glove, the Club of Villains.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that the trifling heifer Jezebel Jet.
but
Um,
but I just want to make a point. This is supposed to be Batman without Bruce Wayne.
Yeah. So if you strip away, again, playing with that identity, playing with consciousness, playing with what is a self, what is an identity, what is a
Yeah,
person, and playing with, stripping away the I guess the ego, stripping away the veneer. What are you underneath inside? What is the and this is the process that you are. So this is
yeah,
kind of because don't they say that too, that Zur-En-Arr is very dangerous because there's no Bruce Wayne, and Bruce Wayne is what.
yeah. Like the way I think of it is like Bruce Wayne is the ground, and to if you strip that away, what do you have, right? Like
Yeah, it's just unleashed.
so.
And if anyone isn't aware, the Zur-En-Arr Batman originally came from, back in the 60s, I think,
Yes,
uh,
yeah,
where the Batman of Zur-En-Arr was this individual who came to Earth, introduced himself to Batman as the Batman of Zur-En-Arr, which was this other universe or dimension. He was the Batman where he came from. So things that Grant would do was take these ideas from the past and would really give them a more grounded kind of backstory, like turning this what was an alien into, well, what that actually is it's another part of Bruce's subconscious.
mm,
And
yeah.
he did that with Batmite too on the top. You see there
Yeah.
another. He took Batmite and he rolled it into his run. And Batmite was real. Batmite is kind of helping ground the Batman of Zur-En-Arr and kind of guiding him. This
So
is
it's like, and look, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've read the story, but like looking back, it's kind of like Batmite is almost like a fragment of Bruce Wayne, or and
mhm.
that kind of guides this animal, this beast, this uncontrolled Batman. Like, hey, you probably shouldn't do that, or hey, you might want to check, this little thing, or you might want to check your tooth. They probably hit something in there. Blah blah blah. It was
Yeah,
pretty funny.
yeah.
This is
And again,
also quintessential Tony Daniel art. I mean, like,
Oh yeah, yeah.
the
This
uh
was the
the
height for me.
yeah.
and we can always talk. But yeah, we can have a whole Tony Daniel episode where we fight each other on what's going on with Tony Daniel.
Could have a
But
Tony
I was
Danza episode.
I was just thinking about Tony Daniel because think about being the artist that's paired with Grant Morrison, and like your Batman is coming out week or monthly. Grant Morrison's your writer, you're the artist, like you're paired with the rock star, your book's selling like hotcakes. And then yeah, this was amazing art. He did some great stuff, and then it seems like like what happened? Did he kind of just take a break, or was I guess it's like sometimes it's like you're riding this massive wave, and you're good. You kind of like just rest on your laurels a bit. Who knows? But I don't mind what he does
This
now.
is kind of like Tony Daniel version of Hush. Like I don't think
Yeah.
he'll ever be as epic as
His coming
what
up
he
party.
did here. But
Yeah.
I was gonna ask you guys too, because obviously you guys are really into Grant. Do you think subliminally, like this is him putting a cowl over his head? Like if he was Batman,
Yeah.
like this would be right. Like because that's like obviously I'm more drawn to the Arkham Asylum because it's very horror, but seeing the whole story of RIP subliminally and also seeing these other videos of Grant and knowing his perspective, it's literally him throwing the cowl on and him as Batman. Like that's what I'm
Yeah.
getting at it.
Yeah.
It's the way I see it is
All
this.
multi-dimensional
Yeah.
timeline, but
Yeah.
he's what centers every little scene. It's the consistency. It's
Yeah. Grant has always been interested in challenging his sense of what is reality, what is consciousness, if I exist in this space, can I exist in a different space? Can I exist in a different time? Time is an illusion. Space is an illusion. That's why I love the Batman through time stuff, because it's like
Hmm.
it's if I die, could I be reincarnated in the past? Like, would I experience myself in the past? Could I experience myself in the future? And then if you think about it, when he talks about that whole caterpillar thing, if you look at it, there is no time, there is no space. So you can be Batman now and still be Batman in the past at the same time. You're Batman now and you're still Batman in the future. It's all happening at the same time continuously, and he plays with that and he jumps through that. It's weird. It's super cerebral, and for me, I was so confused by that when I first read it without any background information.
I bet
Yeah.
you him and Alan Moore get along really well.
I don't know if Alan gets along with anyone anymore.
Yeah.
But
I think
wouldn't you
there
love to
was-
be just a fly on the wall if those two were in just a room talking? Oh my
There
god!
was some sort of beef with them, I think. Well, I mean, it might be, incorrect, but
Gotta look that
there
up.
was something there between the two of them. I'm not sure how well they get along, though.
I'm not surprised.
Completely forgot to mention, Grant Morrison is a practicing sigil magician,
Oh yes.
which means that Grant Morrison believes that you can manifest reality if you and they have a protocol they wrote into the back pages of one of the issues I believe of the Invisibles, where they talk and tell you, if you write and draw out a word and you break that down to a couple of letters, you break that down to an image based on the whatever. If you put that in a piece of paper, you fold it up and you concentrate on it, you concentrate on it, you concentrate on it. I'm not kidding you. You masturbate while you're concentrating on it. You concentrate, and at the moment of climax, you think about that manifestation. This is the truth. They believe that it will come true. That
He,
you have the ability to manifest your reality. And
he,
Grant
he said that
explains.
on one of the videos that you sent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Grant explains that in some of the issues of the Invisibles, and there's also in the first arc of Batman, there's people that he puts in the comics. He puts himself into the comics.
Yeah.
And that's on purpose, because they've said Grant is literally trying to manifest meeting with other people, meeting with famous people. They've put things that they want to have happen to them in their comics. And one of the things that he didn't notice that was happening was they didn't notice. They wrote in part of the Invisibles that one of the main characters that is based on him gets shot in the face, and then in reality, Grant claims that a couple months later they got a staph infection in their cheek and almost died from the infection, and then they had to then write that he survived so that he would survive, that they would survive in real life. So, side story. Back to the comics. This was massive, just culturally. That happened during his run. This is technically not in the Batman run, but it folds over into Final Crisis, the main event, where this is such an iconic image, such an iconic moment where Batman literally fucking dies, and
Yeah.
stops, sacrifices himself basically to stop Darkseid.
And it affected so much in the other comics, because not only we had Battle for the Cowl happen, and then we had that period of time where Dick was Batman. It changed everything. Detective Comics became a Batwoman book.
That
Yeah.
was, if I could just real quick, like that time in life was incredible because there was Final Crisis happening simultaneously with RIP, which is also happening while one of the movies, the Dark Knight movie, was coming out, I think.
Hmm.
So it was
yeah.
all kind of in and around the same time.
Yeah,
And Batman not only dies in Final Crisis, he also kind of sort of died in RIP at the end. That was a little controversy that was happening. So
wild, which led into then Dick Grayson taking on the mantle of Batman, and Damian Wayne becoming the new Robin, which he created Damian.
Yeah.
He did create Damien.
Yeah, and his Grant's story for Damian was meant to end where Damian died in Batman Incorporated. The Grant didn't plan for Damian's
Resurrection.
return. Yeah, that that came during that New 52 Batman and Robin.
Well,
Yeah.
Grant took the baby that was born in God, what was that book?
Oh yeah,
Son of the
Curse,
Demon.
was it Curse of the Demon or Son
Curse
of the Demon?
Demon.
One of those.
Son of the Demon.
Yeah.
Son of the Demon.
I forget who wrote it. Was it Mike W. Barr? I can't remember.
It might have been.
Um,
What?
Anyway,
And now
yeah,
I'm
Grant
blanking
took
on the
that
name.
baby and essentially made him Damien.
Yeah, he in one of the interviews, they're talking about. I think it's the Kevin Smith one. They're talking about. Imagine if Batman was sexy like the Neil Adams. He's got a chest and a hairy chest and takes his shirt off. He fucks the devil's daughter as a child. The devil's daughter, the devil's son is Damien, and it's fucking so funny the way that they see Batman as, you know, Batman was goofy. Batman was, you know, the pulp version. Then he was sexy again when Neil Adams took him over and made him look sexy and shirtless.
Yeah.
And then he became nuts again. And then, you know, Damien has to ground him or whatever. One of the things that Grant mentions is they flipped the duality of the Dark Knight being the gritty, mean asshole, and Robin the Boy Wonder being the kind of the
Yeah.
light fluffiness. It switches because then Dick becomes Batman, Damien becomes the asshole. So I loved that run of you know, Batman and Robin where you know, there's moments in that run where like they're in the Batmobile and they're going over like a massive jump, and then it's like Batman and Robin will never die. Like they're fucking like, it was so sick. So, like, Batman and Robin will never die. Like, and they're like basically talking shit. Like they're the best dynamic duo, you know, because it's not Bruce, it's us. You know, it's like the kids, the parent went away for the weekend and the kids fucking went joyriding with the car. And it's
Yeah,
just kind
and
of
was
that
it
fun.
in that same Batman on Batman? Anywhere, somewhere, I remember Grant Morrison saying that his whole purpose was to have Damien die.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Just like what Robin
Yeah.
said, it's like, you know, kind of like when Miller created Elektra. Her whole purpose was to create an emotional character and then kill her, and that
Mhm.
made, you know, a more interesting story. Same with, you know, it gave Bruce more tragedy. But then DC realized a lot of people like him. Let's exploit this and sell some more books of this.
And hated him.
And hated him, yeah.
Yeah, he's just a polarizing character, and the way you take a character to the limit is by either killing them or killing someone closest to them and exploring that, and that's what Grant kind of did. Another thing that Grant created, which is a personal favorite, is
Oh yeah.
Professor Pig,
Yeah.
which eventually became a big part of the games. And was he in any other shows? I think he was in Gotham.
He
wasn't
was in Beware the Batman.
the show. That's right.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
that
fucking
animated
kid
series.
show.
Yeah.
Yeah, so wild to think about.
And yeah, they did a really good job with him in Arkham Knight. Made him all creepy and
Yeah,
Well, spoilers, I haven't played it yet. I'm still on.
yeah, 86% on Arkham City. But yeah, I was trying to remember Damien's original name in Son of the Demon, and yeah, it was Ibn al-Zufash, and yeah,
Okay.
it was Mike W. Barr.
Okay, cool.
and was Kubert was, I think during that time Kubert was doing some of the art. Frank, I can't remember. It's always mixed up, but Kubert did like maybe the first. I can't remember, but I just remember the first couple issues of Damien coming into the mix looked fucking amazing.
Yeah,
it
I
was
think
cool.
Damien's first appearance was he was doing the art.
Yeah, and then there's multiple. I love that too. There's he takes the concept of Man Bat, and Kirk Langstrom. You know, he blackmails Kirk Langstrom to create the serum so that he can create an army of Man Bats, to kind of be the
Yeah.
cronies for what's his name, Ra's al Ghul. Good shit, man. Some good shit.
Yeah, a lot of people hate Damien, and like when I'm citing some of the things that I like about Damien, it's funny that a couple of my favorite things that I use to explain to people why he's why he's cooler than they think aren't even Grant parts. But in the New 52, the Peter Tomasi and Pat Gleason run, there's that part real early on, you know, because they start with Damian is still being sort of brought into Bruce's way of living, and the whole Batman and everything. And Bruce commands Damian to stay in the cave. This may be right after Damian and Tim had gotten into a fight in the cave, and Damian had basically left Tim for dead. But Bruce goes out to catch someone. I forget who it was, who he was going out to find, and he demanded that Damian stay in the cave because he couldn't be trusted. Damian decides he's going to show Bruce how useful he can be, and he goes out to find the same person, finds him first, and cuts his fucking head off and brings it back to the cave.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I was just looking
But-
at that panel.
But then the other one, this is the two sides of the coin that there are to Damian. There's that, I forget what issue it is, but leading up to one of the anniversaries, I think it's leading up to the anniversary of the murder of Thomas and Martha, Damian had been taken off on his own sometimes, and Bruce didn't know what he was doing. And what we eventually find out Damian was doing when he presents Bruce a gift on the anniversary of the death of his parents, we find out that Damian had been searching through the sewers underneath Crime Alley, and what he presents Bruce with, I think it was like a velvet ring box, like a wedding ring would be in, and he gives that to Bruce, and Bruce opens it up, and it's one of the pearls from Martha Wayne's necklace, and that was what Damian was scouring the sewers for, to give that to Bruce on the anniversary of their death.
Yeah. There's another part during that Tomasi Gleason run too that just like fucking destroyed me, was when Damien is having like these moments with Alfred, and Alfred is trying to like help rehabilitate Damien to not be a fucking sadistic, psychotic like killer the way that he was programmed and raised to be. And so Damien is constantly trying to prove that he's not. And at one point, Alfred goes under Damien's bed and like opens up a box, and he sees that Damien's been killing birds, so that he doesn't kill people, to keep himself from he knows he can't stop from killing because he's programmed to do it. So instead of killing people, he'll kill like animals, and it's just so fucked up and sad. Like the way you see Alfred opens the box and he sees like the dead birds, and he's like heartbroken that he knows he's trying so hard to not be the killer that he is, but Damien can't stop himself. So he's like, the one thing he can do is, okay, I can't kill people, but I have to kill. What can I kill? It's like birds. There's tons of them. No one's ever gonna notice. So fucking crazy.
It's sort of like a Louis eating rats in Interview with a Vampire.
Or Louis my dog eating rats.
That's useful.
There was speaking of that, there was, throughout the run, this, with all those, four characters, Bruce, Dick, Alfred, Damien, there's so much father and son stuff happening there. Like, I didn't have a particularly, great relationship with my dad until the end. So it was, it's heavy. It's super heavy, But there's so much. There's father and son stuff. There's superhero stuff. There's magic. There's drugs. There's religion, and throughout the whole 7 years or whatever it was.
Yeah, and another great moment was that moment that Dick and Damian had in Batman Incorporated. Where Damian charges into his death against the heretic.
Yeah.
By this time Bruce was obviously long back as Batman, and Dick was back to being Nightwing. But before Damian goes into his death, he had that moment, with Dick.
Yeah, he said we were the best, Richard. I don't care what anybody says.
And then
he didn't want it to end.
Yeah, and then Tomasi and Gleason did that. They did that Requiem arc. Where every issue was about Damian's passing for that 1 month.
No words.
And there was that silent issue of Batman and Robin that ended with Bruce had that breakdown, and in the sort of locker room of the Batcave where they keep the costumes and everything, he just destroyed the lockers and everything. And it ends with that shot of him hugging Damien's costume that mirrored the image of him and Damien hugging, when they were coming to terms, as father and son. Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff in all
Yeah,
that.
Tomasi and fucking Gleason, man. They also did in part of that well, I don't know if it was, I think it was them in that, and maybe it was them. There's an issue where Bruce is like alone in the Batcave, breaking down after and there's no dialogue, but he's like, first of all, yes, of course he would do this. He records their patrols, the audio of them being out on patrol, and so he plays back one of the patrols that he was doing with Damien, and you hear him, and so he has Damien's voice on recording, and he's listening to the recording of him and Damien on patrol, like talking back and forth as Batman and Robin, and how Damien is like so alive and so like joyous to be doing this, and he's like crying as he's listening to the recording of Damien, and it's like, holy fuck. Like,
Yeah, Damien is probably going to be Grant Morrison's biggest legacy that he brought to the Batman mythos. Besides all the weirdness, but that one character, he it's going to be interesting how they age him up over time.
Yeah.
there's a couple issues where he does that in this run, and he shows what would it be like in the future with
He's
Damien and
supposed to be
Batman 666.
Yeah, he's supposed to be like where he sells his soul.
Yeah.
And he's like got powers. It's crazy.
He's bald. I
Yeah,
don't like that part.
that's that's the devil shit and the God thing. That image you showed earlier of Alex Ross, Batman RP is he looks like Jesus Christ rising. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a ton of weird shit in here. And then, some people are trying to say, was Dr. Hurt the devil? Whatever. I mean, man, it was.
That was good shit.
I know when we covered this story one time, I had to read this thing like 3 times because I was like, "What is going on here?"
Yeah.
What baffles me is like DC agreed to it. Like, hey, no problem. Yeah, this shit is like some fucking
you can't
abstract
just jump
stuff.
in. You can't just jump into half of his. You can't jump in halfway. You have to run.
That was pre-social media days, right? Like, well, big social media anyway, like the way we know it now. So
Yeah, in the early parts of it, and that was an easier time to have comics be a surprise. Like, I remember when the Damien Death issue of Incorporated came around, the news was out like the week before that issue came out. It was all over online, and so then everyone was trying to snap up copies of that issue.
I mean, he also has a history of generating big dollars for DC, so they're just like, hey, roll the dice again, and
and a big part of why we wanted to do this is it's just a tough read. I mean, even if you like Morrison, if you like Batman, it takes like, wait, what the fuck? I got to read that again, because there's layers to what Morrison is doing, and a lot of it to keep in mind is that's kind of why we want to do this episode. Is Morrison is challenging the idea of time, he's challenging the idea of space, he's challenging the idea of identity, and what all of that means when you play with it. So timelines crossing, multiple timelines at the same time, past, present, and future happening at the same time, but also you can jump and live it linearly. All of that is challenged in his run, and like what you got to take into consideration is why is because they believe they were taken, their consciousness was taken out of their physical body, was taken out of the third dimension, put into the fifth dimension, and where Grant was in that time, there was no time, there was no space, there was just consciousness. That the best way I can describe it is at the end of, if you guys have seen the movie Interstellar, when Matthew McConaughey is trying to connect back to his daughter. I don't know if you guys have not seen it. Anybody not seen this?
I haven't seen it, no.
There's a scene. Well, I don't want to spoil it. Oops, I already did.
That's
It's like
fine.
20 years old. Get with
Yeah.
it, Grumps. There's a scene where he is going through this black hole, and he comes out of the black hole, and he comes into this library or matrix of memories, and he can access the past and connect to his daughter. And that's basically what Grant was trying to do, is trying to explain that reality, or what reality is, it's not a linear timeline. It is a matrix where their belief is, if you exit the third dimension, enter the fifth dimension, you can now go into different times and different places whenever you want, at the same time, past, present, future, and have those experiences, because it's all happening continuously at the same exact time. So Batman being able to jump from the past, present, and the future, being able to experience themselves in different forms as different people, it makes sense, because that's what reality is. It's not linear. It's this matrix where you can jump and find yourself into different multiple dimensional areas. And that is, for me, once I figured that out, oh, okay, this shit makes more sense now.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like, okay, that makes sense to me now. Okay, well, how is this? There's an issue. There's one of the issues, I want to say, Batman and Robin Reborn, where they show you the same thing happening in three different timelines. They show you the same thing happening as like 1966 Batman, as like Neil Adams Batman, as um, present day Batman, and it's like, what the fuck is going on? Why does he continuously re-experience the same moment as different versions of himself? And that's the challenge, is that Morrison was, first of all, Batman is in an isolation chamber tripping balls, but Morrison is
Yeah.
also saying that all of these three different timelines happened at the same time, and Batman's consciousness can tap in and out of it and experience each of them however they want, because that's what reality is. Reality is not one timeline. Reality is infinite different versions of it that you can experience. You can pop out and pop in whenever you want.
So when I listen to Rosetta Stoned by Tool, that is Batman on the table.
Yeah, tripping
Okay.
balls
Just wanted to make,
with the YouTube the visualizer going.
wanted to be clear.
Yeah.
I think
Um.
you if you're listening to this, you got to start with Arkham Asylum and Gothic, because themes and characters from those two stories come back in RIP. Maybe not the Black Glove, but Barbatos comes back multiple times throughout the run. And Barbatos was introduced, pretty sure, in Gothic.
I think another good way to explain everything that Tom was just explaining there is simply with this image right here.
Time is
Time
a
the
flat
flat
circle.
circle.
You know what's like, as it's a joke, but that's exactly what he was trying to explain. And what's funny is parts of that first series of True Detective are influenced by the book The King in Yellow, which deals with that exact concept of a constant happening through different timelines and different experiences in different times and places. Everyone reads this book, and it's like, once you read the book, you go crazy. So it's showing different versions of timelines, different versions of lives, reading the same book and going crazy in a different way. Great reference. But there was something else I wanted to add. Oh, yes, a good thing to help people with if you are struggling to understand this. How does Grant Morrison tie everything together? I believe it was after his run, at some point, maybe during his run, they came out with Batman: The Black Case Book.
Yeah,
And
that's actually, if you're looking at a timeline of reading all Grant's Batman stuff, the Black Case Book is where to start.
because that explains where these historical issues that were influencing his run come from, and that way you have, okay, oh, Batmite, oh, Zernar, oh, the communicator that he uses with frequencies, it's all in there.
The Bat Radio.
Bat radio, yeah. Wild shit. So, like I said, I hopefully this intro episode gives you a better comprehension of what to expect, and when it gets weird, that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna be reading it, and the shit that's like, what the fuck? We're gonna be grabbing a hold of, like, okay, this is what Grant means. This is what they were doing. This is what they were saying, or this is what we're trying to say, and there it is,
There it
right
is.
there. And then that'll hopefully help with understanding the crazy parts of this run.
Are we gonna do hash or like, how far are we gonna go?
I'll
Create
say
sigils.
Yeah,
We are not
first-
doing drugs, people.
First
Just-
episode, I will do sigil magic on air.
Oh boy. I'm busy that day.
If you guys don't know what I was just doing, visualize. Everyone listening to this, stand up, slightly lean forward, bend your knees, close your
All
eyes,
right, great.
bite your lips.
Have a good night,
and-
everybody. Thank
and
you.
then roll some dice.
Man, if we had any sponsors, we would have just lost them.
Golly.
We would have lost $2 billion like Kanye in one day.
Oh,
And got canceled by the city of Chicago.
We want to get more subscribers, not lose them.